For someone like me who's paid fairly close attention to news around climate action and to politics for the last, let's say, 15 years, it won't come as a surprise to hear that for me, Ed Miliband has been a significant figure, I guess, in my adult life. And I think will go down as a significant figure in the story of climate change when we look back in 30, 50, 70 years' time. Recently, Ed Miliband was interviewed on the Rest is Politics Leading podcast by Alistair Campbell and by Rory Stewart. They did the interview over 2 parts, over an hour and 40. And of course, as a left-leaning bloke in my mid-30s, I'm obviously into podcasts, and I obviously would be interested in this interview. In the second part of the conversation, which they've titled on YouTube, Why Blair and Farage Are Wrong About Net Zero, Ed Miliband sets out some of the reasons why we could be excited about this transition and what the vision could be for a transformed society and ultimately transform civilization if we get this right. So in this video, I'm going to give some response to what I think is a brilliant conversation from a really significant figure in this Labour government. So here we go to the Rest is Politics Leading podcast.
That brief, because one of the things I'm really interested in on the politics of all this and populism and so forth is how successfully the populist right, have weaponized net zero.
First of all, I think this is one of the key risks that we've got at the moment with this kind of culture war way of doing politics that we have with Reform and Nigel Farage and Trump over the water, is that we're taking this potentially existential crisis and making it into a fight for a culture war that's trying to pretend that we have a different option of not responding to it. And I think that's a culture war that's provoked by fossil fuel interests, and I think it's one that is not got our best interests at heart. We need to do something to respond to climate change. Mr Farage pretending we don't is completely irrelevant. Alistair Campbell says that they've been successful in this conversation. I don't think they have, and I think that we see through that. But anyway.
I wonder what your reflections were on that, whether you've got the right strategy for dealing with that, or whether actually there is a sense that you're kind of on the back foot the whole time now.
Absolutely not. We're not on the back foot, and we're going to win the argument. So I'm in this odd position where I did the job before, 2008, 2010 as Climate Change Secretary.
Under Gordon.
Yeah. Introduced the Climate Change Act, started by my brother, was seen through by me, world-leading act. So over the last 5 years, we've constructed a big argument around climate, which I think is the coalition building on the right argument, which is a climate argument and also an energy security argument and a jobs and growth argument. And I think what is really important is it's absolutely in Keir's DNA. Indeed, he said the other day, it's in the DNA of the government. This is the route to secure energy independence. This is the route to lower bills. This is the route to the jobs of the future. And it's the route to doing the right thing for future generations.
I'm sure he's going to go on to say more about this, but the point he's making there about energy independence, energy security is really important. What the right of this conversation, of this culture war, is saying is that we should continue to rely on Gulf states for our energy, or on Russia. If relying on fossil fuels does not mean we're going to rely on our own energy. The North Sea is diminishing and has been diminishing for years. It's relying on others for our energy. So what we're saying, if we don't work to achieve net zero, is that we're saying that we won't be independent of people around the world. That's first point. Second point is if we don't upgrade our systems, these aging systems that are in need of repair, in need of investment, if we just want business as usual, and again that's what the right on this conversation is saying, then our systems will just fall apart. Our infrastructure is nearing end of life, needs investment. So what we're doing in terms of net zero, Ed Miliband's talking about jobs as well as energy security. So what we're doing is we're investing in retooling, repowering the country for a different industrial future, but also so that we can maintain status quo, so that we can keep things as we're used to today.
And it's a really important thing here, which is there is a right-wing ecosystem that wants to say net zero is terrible, and that's not where the public is. Talk to any of the pollsters and they say the same thing, which is the attempt to create a successful culture war around net zero to undermine the government is not going to work because it's not where the public is. Now, that isn't to say we don't need to be careful. And that's why allying the climate argument with the security and bills argument is so important, and the jobs argument is so important. But we absolutely can win and are going to win this argument.
I think that's really interesting, like the pollster stuff, and it does, particularly if Farage is involved, it does make you think of Brexit. Like, hey, the pollsters, we all thought that we weren't going to vote to lead the EU. Farage is able to get this, Farage, I should call him Farage, is able to get this this kind of momentum behind what he says and thinks that people believe and understand, supported by the right-wing media of the Telegraph and the Daily Mail. So I guess we should be careful about this. But I think I agree. As a country, we see the need to change, the need to invest. And I think that majority of people are kind of like, yeah, cool, we need to do something about this. It will make our lives better. It will make our air cleaner. It will make our energy cheaper. And I think, yeah, I will continue to be making that point in the videos that I make going forward.
If you can reflect, though, on the way in which we talk about this and why people feel anxious about it, because it can...
I've listened to the rest of his politics quite a lot, and I want to call out like Rory Stewart quite regularly on what he is selling net zero to be, and I think Ed Miliband's about to do something similar. Rory Stewart kind of suggests, yeah, we will be increasing costs, we'll be making lives more difficult. He's kind of playing into that culture-y, war-y thing, which I don't think is true. So anyway, pinch of salt from Rory Stewart on this issue.
It can be seen as part of that whole story of the 90s and 2000s, that you could group it with international development spend, interventions, markets, as being something where experts had a very clear consensus, everybody agreed, everybody was doing the right thing, all the parties converged, and somehow the public began to become a little bit alienated and anxious. What do you think made some people in the public feel a bit anxious?
But the thing is, Rory, I will sort of answer your question, but just to be really careful on the premise here, because people are trying to persuade you of the premise that there is a big net zero backlash out there, and there just isn't the evidence for this. Yes, there is a political party...
Trump winning, drill baby drill, Farage pushing net zero.
Well, hang on a minute.
The AFD. I mean, there's a lot of political entrepreneurs who sense this stuff.
Well, hang on a minute. Yeah. I mean, different things going on. I'm talking about Britain here. Let's start with Britain. And my lesson, which I would apply to Britain and apply elsewhere, is if you say to people, in order to tackle the climate crisis, you, an ordinary person suffering from the cost of living crisis, is going to have to pay thousands of pounds more, it's not going to work, right? But that's not our argument. And here's the two big things have changed since I was last climate change secretary. First, the situation has got far worse. The emergency has got far worse. It's really important to say that. 10 hottest years since 2015, extreme weather events all around the world, from Doncaster to California. But secondly, there's been this dramatic thing that has happened, which is the fall in the price of renewables. So they're now cheaper than fossil fuels, not just for Britain, but for 2/3 of the world. Solar, wind, solar costs down 90%, wind costs down 60%. And Russia-Ukraine showing our dependence on fossil fuels is what ruined family finances, business finances, and the public finances. And so what's changed...
I think this is so important. We've got to do something about this. This is an emergency, and this is a better economy. This is better investment. This is better technology. This is better infrastructure for us as a country. Two really, really important points. If you don't believe in the climate science, well, let's improve our economy, our infrastructure anyway. if you're not bothered about the economy, we've got to do something about the climate science.
Is you can ally the energy security bills argument as well as the jobs opportunity with climate today and tomorrow.
To be cheeky for a second, I would say that the way you're talking now is exactly the way Alistair would have wanted you to talk. You're defending the record. You're not conceding the criticisms of the opposition. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons it's so strong is that you're not tempted to say, well, you know, we got a lot wrong about the way we used to talk about climate change. There are lessons that we've learned, and here's a new thing. You're saying absolutely unambiguous. In fact, you were refusing to accept my premise that there was stuff that we got wrong.
Look, I think it's a slightly different category of things.
He's defending the present.
Well, I'm defending the present and the future. The other thing is, we'll get on to TB and his intervention.
Well, should we read out the messages you sent to me when TB intervened in the net zero debate?
I don't know.
You're not going to deny.
I don't know.
Can I just explain this? So,
yeah.
And there'll be a lot of the two of you explaining he didn't quite mean it. But so the Tony Blair Institute released a report called The Climate Paradox, Why We Need to Reset Action on Climate Change. In the foreword, Blair argued that voters are noticing the credibility gap between being asked to make financial sacrifices and changes in lifestyle, whilst knowing that their impact on global emissions is minimal. Blair also believes that limits to fossil fuels in the short term are doomed to failure.
I did a video about this, and I think that, a lot of what was reported about Tony Blair's intervention was overstated, and actually what he was suggesting was more action on climate. These guys probably disagree with that, but anyway, you could watch that for yourself a different time.
He didn't quite mean that. It's been taken out of context, and none of you disagree with Tony Blair. Over to you.
I'll check it against the text.
Alistair and I had a spirited exchange on the day where we agreed, actually. Although I then noticed on the podcast, you sort of said, I said it was a timing issue, which was an extremely sort of, chicken shit way out, if I may say so. Look,
basically said, what the F is he up to now?
Yeah, okay.
Right.
The report itself, but he wrote forward to the report. The report itself is perfectly unobjectionable.
That's right. What said.
In general. Well, he didn't quite say that. He just said there was a timing problem. The report itself, look, what's disappointing about Tony's forward, and I have huge respect for Tony, is I think it's incredibly defeatist, which is not what Tony is. It's really defeatist.
Because what to say that fossil fuels?
Well, it sort of says we're not going to succeed, and we're not going to achieve 1.5, and the whole thing is it's all going badly. Let me just sort of give you some context to this, right? When I was climate change secretary, nobody mentioned the word net zero. I didn't know the term net zero because our ambition was for 80% reductions in emissions by 2050. Right, pre-Trump, but still a majority, 90% of the world was covered by net zero targets. Now it's something like, it's a majority of the world, right? I was looking back, because I'm an absolute bloody nerd, at a document you both won't be familiar with called the UNEP Emissions Gap Report.
We did an emergency podcast. I'm sure we did.
Right, in 2010. Actually, preparing for this made me sort of think about this. They said that, this was after the Copenhagen climate summit, which didn't go well, they said that the pathways from Copenhagen through to 2100 imply temperature increase of between 2.5 to 5 degrees, right? We were heading for potentially up to 5 degrees. Now, we are heading for something like 2.5, maybe 3 degrees. Don't get me wrong, 2.5, 3 degrees, very bad. But it's just not true to say the world hasn't made progress. The world, in its very difficult way, through the multilateral process, which is kind of a nightmare, has made progress. India has a net zero target. China has a net zero target. The UK has a net zero target. Now, is China and India doing everything right? No. Is Britain doing everything right? We're trying to, but, it's not true that the world isn't taking this seriously. Why?
It's an interesting point. Yes, some of the things are progress. Yes, particularly the China story, I think, is seeing kind of the news recently of the it went down emissions by 1% in this last year. That is really significant. The net zero targets for the UK of 2050, China 2060 or something, India after that. Yeah, they're purposeful and meaningful, but they're also a lifetime away, and we need action much more quickly. And I almost prefer, we want to have reduced emissions by half in 5 years, in 10 years, or whatever. Those shorter term emissions reduction targets, I think, are much more important than those longer term net zero targets. Anyway, that's my point.
Why? It's because of self-interest. It's self-interest and economic opportunity. They think, they see the dangers of climate, what it's doing, and they see that actually there is a path through.
To channel Tony Blair for a moment, right? I mean, surely he's right. There is a kind of credibility gap between the changes in lifestyle that are being demanded with the fact that actually, as he points out, the impact on global emissions of what you're doing is going to be minimal.
That's one of the things I don't like about what Rory Stewart says about this stuff, is that I feel like he's talking an almost an uneducated. He's just parroting other people's perspectives on this rather than the reality. And I think Ed Miliband's going to put him right here.
Well, okay, 2 points. One, I sort of don't like the phrase changes in lifestyle. We're going to have better lives for people in the net zero world.
Absolutely.
Right? The Climate Change Committee in their 7th carbon budget published earlier this year says that moving to net zero will cut people's energy bills by £700, will cut people's motoring costs by £700. That's a better life for people. Warmer homes, tackling fuel poverty, green spaces, good jobs. They're all good things about it. And secondly, I think you, if I may say so, in that question, are being far too defeatist about Britain. We passed the Climate Change Act 2008, started by my brother, completed by me. Countries around the world were the first to do it. Countries around the world emulated us. Lots of countries around the world. We've got this mission, clean power by 2030. If we achieve that, and I'm absolutely determined we do, other countries will say, look what Britain's been able to do. We can do that too. Yeah. So let's not have a diminished view of Britain. We really matter in this. So many countries come to me and say, you've got a really important responsibility here.
First episode, you mentioned
that point about, we're only 1% of global emissions. I mean, that's exactly right. If we achieve rapid decarbonisation of the electricity system, we're showing that our engineers and are able to deliver on significant change, and we can set the agenda for lots of other countries. We can, export our skills, all this kind of stuff. This is really exciting. And the point Ed Miliband's made is that we in the past have led on this stuff, whether it's at negotiations or setting the first net zero target of a major economy into law. There's so much that so much impact that we can have on our friends, our neighbours, our allies, our enemies, etc. through doing this well.
The trade unions 2 or 3 times. One of your biggest critics on this is Gary Smith of the GMB.
Sure.
I'm a member of GMB, and I'm not sure why, because Gary Smith is saying things that are slowing net zero progress all the time. Anyway,
who I bumped into at an airport not long ago, and he was absolutely on the oil and gas in particular. So you, in a way, it feels to me like you're being got at from the right and to some extent by the
No, look, Gary and I agree on a lot. He is worried about the North Sea. He's seen 70,000 jobs go in the North Sea in the last decade because the North Sea is a declining basin.
Absolutely.
Our responsibility, working with Gary and others, is to make sure that we have a proper transition, a fair transition. Now,
I like the conversations about a Green New Deal where we're taking skilled workers, we may be retraining them, we may be giving them an opportunity in different skills, but we're as we invest in this industrial revolution to decarbonise our economy, we're also taking people with us to ensure that skilled workers still have a future. And I think that's really important. I don't think it's really part of Labour rhetoric or policy yet. I think the Green Party do a good job on talking about this stuff. But it's how do we sow that opportunity for skilled workers across the country that are worried about their jobs to improve their lives, to get similar jobs, and to help decarbonise the economy at the same time. I think that's a really exciting political conversation.
Absolute key to this. Why did those 70,000 jobs went and they weren't replaced? Why? Because the government didn't have a proper industrial policy to have carbon capture and storage and jobs in offshore wind and hydrogen and all those things. And our job, our responsibility, which I'm determined we achieve, is to create those jobs. Things like Great British Energy. We'll come on to this in a sec, but Great British Energy, publicly owned energy company, pushed forward by this government. But part of achieving.
Okay, taking the sort of the passion down for a second, which is wonderful.
We don't mind passion.
Moving and beautiful.
God. And you say that to every guest.
What are the risks? I mean, let's say, contrary to everything that you hope, in 20 years' time, it hasn't quite worked out. That we replay this tape.
Yeah.
And people are like, really? Did did it really work out like that in the North Sea?
Yeah.
Did it really work out like that for energy bills? What are the risks that you're thinking about? What are the 2 or 3 things that could go wrong and that you really worry about that might stop your dream coming true?
The biggest single risk, Rory, is that we are held in absolute contempt by future generations because they say, you as a generation were in a unique position. You knew about the problem. You knew about the scale of the problem. You saw wildfires. You saw heat wave deaths. By the way, 10,000 in the UK since 2020, according to the UK Health Agency. You knew the problem and you had time to do something about it, and you totally fucked it up. You didn't do it.
Great. So
but I think it's a really important point, Rory, that is by far the biggest risk. And in 10 years' time, people are going to be saying, not, why were you taking this issue so seriously? They say, why the hell weren't you taking this issue more seriously than any other issue?
That I guess is my question, right? So let's say in 20 years' time, people do say that, right? And you didn't succeed in doing what they would have liked you to do.
Yeah.
What would be the factors that would lead to that failure?
I think you've got to bring the public with you by making people better off, by converting the opportunity of cheaper, cleaner power into people's homes, into people's lives.
And what are the obstacles there? What might stop that happening?
One of the reasons I think a Labour government is best placed to do this is that if you think about this, there are sort of benefits and burdens of this transition, and it's government expenditure, the role of government, that makes those things fair and makes sure that ordinary people benefit from these changes. So putting in a heat pump, we've got to make sure, yes, we need people to convert to heat pumps, got to make sure it's affordable for them and it's going to be cheaper to run the heat pump. EVs, electric vehicles, similarly, it's got to make sense for ordinary people in terms of the cost of living crisis. That is the single biggest thing.
And the obstacle there, presumably, if you don't succeed in doing it, will be that in the end, you weren't, for whatever reason, able to make it fully affordable.
Yeah, I think we can, though.
I think I'll stop it there because they go on to talk about wider ranging issues, and that's the bit on net zero and climate I want to focus on. I think, it's amazing to see a cabinet minister, a front bench, a heavyweight Labour politician make the points that Ed Miliband has been making. And I would love to see more of this kind of conversation, really making the argument in this culture war that we now have, that this is going to make lives better, this is going to make air quality better, this is going to make costs lower for energy, this is going to make homes warmer, this is going to increase our energy independence, reduce our reliance on dodgy regimes all around the world. And hearing Ed Miliband's passion about what the future generations will think of us and our generation, that seems really key to me. We have an opportunity to make our lives better today and also prevent catastrophe tomorrow. So that's why I wanted to share this set of clips. That's why I am so behind and impressed by Ed Miliband. That's why I think that we need to stand up against the right wing, the far right in this country of Mr Farage and his friends, Mr Trump across the pond. Somehow Mr Musk has got himself onto this bandwagon. We can do much more to sow and to cast the vision for a better future that comes through a green industrial revolution. It comes through decarbonisation. It comes through that dodgy term net zero. So that's my thoughts on this interview. I hope you found it interesting and I guess as inspiring as I did.